All right, we're live. Welcome to Artcasters episode 356. Should be a good one, good episode. We're going to be talking about a theme that applies to a lot of my illustration and graphic design work, and I believe quite a lot of ours. And something like that doesn't get talked about a lot as much, like especially like how to set up and all sorts of stuff like that. So without more innuendo and hints, I'm gonna just go ahead and make the rounds, and we'll all introduce ourselves. So you're on my channel. I'm Joshua Kemble, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and that way you'll get notification. I'm hearing like a weird reflection.
I'm getting an echo. I wonder if it's. Let me try to mute myself. Tell me if it's me because I'm on my iPad and I don't have headphones. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, it's you. It's you, Scott. Sorry.
Could be.
But we can just
try to. I don't think Jen's using my laptop, so let me grab it and see if I can log back on. So just keep going.
Okay, cool. So if you guys haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell. That way you get notifications when we're about to go live. And yeah, I should be doing live streams. I've been saying that for like 2 months, but I'm very close to relaunching live streams again. And so you want to make sure you're subscribed, and you can check that out. And then my books, Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories, are available at bookstores everywhere online and in stores, and you should get them. All right, Corey, where can everybody find your work and check out what you're doing and get your cool newsletters and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, you can, unsurprisingly, you can find all of that cool stuff at CoreyKerr.com. So if you go to CoreyKerr.com, you should see buy shirts. That'll take you to my store where I have shirts and mugs and flags, and I'm starting to add a couple other things after listening to Gary's stream railing on shirts and how nobody wears t-shirts anymore. And so I've got hoodies. So you can check that out. And if you just want to hear what I have to say about things, then you can go to CoreyKerr.com/email and you can sign up for my email newsletter.
All right. And the guy who hates no, I'm just kidding. It's just like, as a former t-shirt artist, I could just see a slew of artists that do t-shirts just being like, what are you talking about?
With the single tear running down their cheek.
Exactly. They're like, that's okay. Everything's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
I may not be a fan of buying t-shirts, but I am a fan of mugs, which I purchased of Corey Kerr. So there you go.
True. And I actually will say mugs are excellent, and Corey Kerr art mugs would be even more so. So
they are.
And I will say I took Gary's opinion more seriously than everyone else on the internet because he's a paying customer. So
there you go. See? You see?
That's true. So basically, if you guys want to troll or be angry at Corey Kerr, make sure you buy a product first.
Horrible. Yeah.
Pay me a small amount of money, and then I will spend hours trying to please you after that.
There you go.
All right. So our guest tonight is of Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, DVSM fame, and the creator of that, as well as an awesome artist who helps solve crimes. Which is a really cool thing to do for your day job. So yeah, well, or I should say helps prosecute crimes.
There we go. Yes, I don't do a lot of solving. Yeah.
But it sounds cool if it's like,
It does sound cool. I was going to let it go. I was sure. Yeah, that's,
So anyhow, our sleuth extraordinaire creator, Gary Hodges, where can people find your work? And all that fun stuff.
Well, the two best places to find and follow me are on Instagram under Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs Marsbots. And the second best place, or the second place, they're both equally good. There's not really a better or worse, is on YouTube right here under my name, Gary Hodges. If you search for me in the channel section, you'll know you found me because the icon is a cartoony dinosaur eating little aliens. So I do weekly live streams right now while I'm drawing the third book in the series, DVSM, which is a sci-fi horror character-focused indie comic that I conceive, write, and draw. Third one's almost done, and pre-orders should open for it around the end of March. So very soon.
That's coming up. It's very exciting. And I will reiterate this every time we have Gary on the show. He's a huge friend of the show. We've had him on multiple times. Every time we have him on, here's Scott again. I think this might work. Hey, that worked.
Wow. We have 2 Scott Circlins, in fact.
2 Scott Circlins. All right, Scott, does the audio work? Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay, hold on. I got to turn.
I'm getting echo. I hear echo.
That's because my iPad's still on it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Here, I'll just turn the volume down.
So you guys joining us from a cave deep.
Okay, can you hear me now?
In the bowels of the earth.
Okay. All right.
Deep in the bowels of the earth, from the underground lair. Sometimes it gets a little echoey in there.
Or maybe from the future. It could be from the future as well.
That's true. Is our host with the most, Scott Circlin. Scott, where can everybody find your work? Can they get the new Young and the Dead yet? Those are the 2. Okay.
They should be able to. I was holding off because I thought I was going to do a convention. But then I figured out that there was a scheduling conflict, so I can't do that. So I have to upload those because I do have them in stock now. I've got to upload them. So the new one's not up yet, which is kind of, I've been selling like the bundles. So I'm one of those people are up.
Is this the one we're talking about that's not available?
Well, you know what? I still have some of those. I actually have some of those variant covers too. That's the variant cover. We'll have to put those up too. So
nice.
And
but
those
if you guys are
quantities,
and if you guys are out there, like, why doesn't you put them up now? That's why you should have backed the Kickstarter. That's all I'm saying. Scott. I will say regarding both those books, like When Young and the Dead goes live, and also Dinosaurs versus Marsbots of Gary. That's what the one through line I didn't finish when the echoes started. Whenever you see Gary have books up, order them because they come in small quantities and then they're sold out for like 4 months. So
they can be. Yeah,
if you want to read those books, when you see them, make sure you act on it. And same with Scott, like those books sell out quick. So like when you see them post, make sure you jump on them while you can. Because anyhow, so Scott, where else can people find your work and all that?
Well, you can find it at my website, circworks.com. I've got a lot of tools, digital tools for making comics there. I've got my books, I've got prints, I've got all kinds of stuff on my website. And also on my YouTube channel, it's just search Circworks Art Labs on YouTube, and you will find me. And I've got over 1,000 videos up there on how to make art, how to make money from art, and make comics, all that kind of stuff, including my series Making Comics 101, which is the most comprehensive free course you're going to find anywhere on how to make comics, and it's up there on my YouTube channel. So definitely check that out.
I love it. Okay. So the topic I'm really excited about, what made me want to talk to Gary about this was this last weekend, I had to get a full skeleton, like an actual skeleton. About a month ago, I knew this was coming up, so I was about to order one. And my sister-in-law, who's an artist as well, was like, "Oh, I've got a skeleton. It's like a little like old, so you might have to like piece it together, but you can use it." So I was like, "Sweet." So I find myself this weekend duct taping a skeleton with my wife. So we have this fully articulated skeleton, and he's on our couch, like being duct taped together. And my kid is so used to artists that he comes out and mom and dad are like putting together a very lifelike skeleton. And he's like, "Oh yeah, cool." Because he's used to weird art stuff. And this was all for reference, like that I'm taking for Not Death But Love. And I had that sinking feeling, and I know that our guest is gonna probably relate to this all too much, that if anybody, like I always get the sneaking suspicion, if anyone didn't know I was an artist, and they looked through my photos that I've taken in the past few years, they'd think I was some kind of mad lunatic.
Or had the worst OnlyFans anywhere. Just like the most terrible OnlyFans of just pictures of you doing weird things with your hands and like making weird faces into the yeah.
So I like after posting that picture to Instagram, I just was like, I gotta talk to Gary about this, because there's a whole art to taking photos for reference, for illustration and cartooning. And so, and I know that all of us kind of implement photography to some or more extent in our work. And I think a ton of artists out there do, but they don't often talk about the idea of like staging it, getting actors, lighting, like how accurate you want it to be, how you kind of arrange that kind of thing, and all the kind of nitty gritty of the actual process of collecting and taking photo reference to use to make illustrations and art. So Gary has been doing like live streams and stuff where he's doing sculptures and all sorts of fun stuff relating to things that he'll photograph and then use as reference. And I just thought, who better to talk about it with than Gary? So Gary, and then maybe this can be an around thing too with Corey and Scott. Why? Like, I guess the first question would be, if I'm like a 12-year-old artist who's like, I like Spawn's amazing, and I'm like, how dare that guy draw from a photograph?
Right. Right.
And of course, I have an accent that's sort of Todd McFarlane-ish. I don't know.
Sort of. Yeah. That's how big a Spawn fan he is.
Yeah.
He wants to talk now like Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Spawn, and that's why. But anyhow, so if I'm that skeptic who's just like, well, I don't need photo reference and stuff. I guess a good starting point would be like, why do artists use photo reference, and what's like the hit, like maybe just a slight insight into like just a little bit of like the history, not total history, but just dip into like how long photo references and life references have been used in art, that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, look, something I've said, I think in past streams and online when I talk to people about it is the only artists who don't really benefit or don't really use reference are artists that would really, really benefit from using reference. I mean, like
or are lying.
Or are lying, or are just maybe not actually like. It's tough. I don't want to poo-poo people who say that, because it's a very pervasive thought. Like, I think there's a weird attitude about working from reference out there, just in the air. And I don't want to poo-poo it, because I think sometimes it honestly, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, I mean it in a very like earnest way. I think it comes from a place of ignorance.
Yeah.
Like, I just think they just don't understand. I mean, I think my first point would be just about any artist you can think of.
Yeah.
From Da Vinci to Michelangelo to Norman Rockwell to Kirby to Boris Vallejo was working from reference. Okay, like this is a part of the process. It's a part of a serious artist process. There's nothing weird about it. It's not a cheat. It's not tracing. It's not whatever kind of weird idea you might have about it in your head. In terms of why do it, I think there can be probably as many reasons as there are artists. But for me personally, D versus M, there's a certain look I'm going for that is more realistic, and it's very character focused, and it's very character drama focused. So I'm looking for like little human things, little human moments, something that I think Jim Lujan is referred to in the D versus M's is like, there's a lot of good hand acting. Like, I want to find those little moments of like, what are people doing when they're talking?
Yeah.
Little expressions in their face, little looks in their eyes, little ways their lips are pursed. Like, and that's something could someone conceivably draw this from the astonishing power of their imagination? Yeah, maybe. Okay. But I'm open to noticing those little things when I have a model in front of me. I'm open to noticing the things that my imagination didn't conjure up. And now I'm seeing it in front of me. And it's like, oh, that's a neat, you know, what's interesting about this pose is this. I'm going to remember that now, or I'm going to do something like that in my drawing. I think you have it when you're working with a live model in particular, which is my preferred way. You can work from photos, you can work from art dolls or action figures or whatever. But when I can, if I'm drawing human characters, I like to recruit friends or, you know, whoever, just to, sometimes I've even hired models to stand in for photos. And every time there's something about it that there's these little aha moments, and you see a little bit of beauty in a pose. You see something surprises you. You really break it down and look at it and see these little things that you would not have just thought of on your own. And it gives you ideas for when you go to draw. It's to me, an indispensable part of my process. Like it's something I build into the time of making a D versus M. Is I do my page planning, I do all my thumbnailing, I figure out what I want, and then I recruit somebody to take hundreds of reference photos of them, making faces, making poses, doing little things, and that becomes a big part of, you know, my resource library when I sit down to draw.
Yeah, I love it. Do you guys have anything to add to that, like kind of why photo reference might be a good thing for an artist, or not just photo reference, but just life reference as well?
Yeah. I think there's like a pervasive myth that you're not a real artist if you haven't memorized every object and every surface and every texture of everything that has ever been created in the face of this earth.
Right.
But that's such a stupid thing to think. Like, if you really think about it, like if you really think through that, like all of the minor iterations of like the human face that give us every variation of everybody on the planet, and no one really looks exactly the same, but things like that. And there's those just tiny little variations on things, like to have consistency from panel to panel and you know it's the same character. How are you going to do that unless like you do the cheat where like, well, this guy's got an eye patch, and so anybody that has an eye patch is that guy. It doesn't matter what the face looks like, but it's that guy.
Yeah.
You know, that guy's got a scar, you know, or whatever, you know, like other than that,
we're halfway to our pirate comic already.
Right. Yeah. We've got the scar and we've got the eye patch. Yeah. But I mean, so that's one thing. But then the other thing is like most people can't accurately describe audibly what another person looks like when they're not looking at them. So how do those same people expect artists to have detail, like how much, you know, how much of a ratio are the corners of this person's mouth compared to the width of their nose, and where in their eyes do the corners of their mouth, like the ratio and proportions of people's faces down to like the detail to actually recreate that. And then you get, like Gary, from your world, you get people trying to describe a perpetrator of something that's like burned into their memory. And it's like proven to be very inaccurate, almost problematically inaccurate. So like the hypocrisy of the people that say that like using photo reference is somehow cheating is like just so immature that it's laughable once you just take it to like an extreme. I can't even remember what, like, people that I have known for decades, like what color their hair is. You know what I mean? Like you're like, you know, I was like, I don't know.
I think it's just a deep misunderstanding of the process.
Yeah.
I suspect what's going on, and by the way, quick interjection. I think Josh was going to say this. We got like 99% of what you said, but a couple times, like your audio kind of blinked. I don't know what was going on there, but But
for a second, I thought you might have been doing the prank I was doing off air or trying to do that failed miserably.
I'm gonna pull a Scott and leave for a second and come back.
I think sometimes, and this is usually, I think, a non-artist thing. I think they imagine what maybe we're doing is quote unquote tracing, you know, and their understanding of that is like what they did when they were 6, where they put a piece of paper on a magazine and went on the outline, or like they made a turkey for Thanksgiving by doing their hand, you know, like that's the, and so it's like, oh, this is cheating somehow. This is a weird cheat. And that's not generally how it's happening. What you're doing is you're looking at something and you're using that to inform you, like where to put the lines and how to think about something and what to emphasize and what not. Like no one is, you know, trying to straight replicate anything that they're photographing. I think I should also add, you know, I'm a huge, and I've talked about this a lot before, a huge fan of figure drawing and life drawing. Like that was my favorite thing to do in school.
It is.
Because I think whether it's that or photographs or working with a model right in front of you or whatever it is, I think it's just teaching you to see little details to kind of hop off of what Corey is saying. Like there's no way you can wrap, unless you're some sort of savant, there's no way you're going to wrap your brain around all the little nuances of a figure or a face. Mm-hmm. And when you have something in front of you, it's not about replicating it. It's about seeing that stuff and it kind of sparking your imagination and making you decide what things do you want to double down on and emphasize, what things are worth ignoring. How do I want to exaggerate this or de-emphasize something? There's a whole process behind it that I think non-artists, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, don't really understand.
Yeah. And I think it's important to kind of, you know, bring up a couple things too for people who are less familiar or like younger artists, where it's like, you know, so then, you know, a lot of artists would counter with like, well, Disney, you know, like they stylize their figures and they just draw them from nothing. And that's
Disney worked from not only did they work from live models, they did live video.
Yeah. So they often do video of walk cycles before they animate a walk cycle for the very reasons that Gary is describing, where there's little nuances to movement that you may not invent. Like if you just invent it, you're going to miss some of the nuances, or you might miss how somebody shifts like their arm a little bit as they're walking. And there's these little subtleties that you can exaggerate as an animator. But if you have video footage, like I think a lot of the movies, they almost acted out the entire films with like a crew of people just to kind of get facial expressions, nuances, voice acting, just to get a feel of like what they were going to be animating. And also, like Gary was saying about life drawing and stuff, you know, I know the Disney crew, like quite often will take trips to zoos to draw animals in person. If they're going to be doing an animation with animals, they're having animals flown in to draw from. And
another one, all these CG artists like animating creatures or figures or cartoon characters or whatever, I guarantee you 100% of them, watch the behind the scenes stuff. 100% of them have basically a makeup mirror at their desk.
Yep.
To look at when they're making faces into it to see what it looks like so they can kind of pose something just right. I mean, this is the process. This is what it means to be a professional artist taking it seriously. You're working from reference. Like I have already kind of called out what I would call ignorance. To be fair, I think artists have some responsibility in this too. And something I've talked about in the past is we can be a little precious and secretive about our processes. And I think a lot of us, myself included, I've been guilty of this in the past, enjoy passing ourselves off as sort of savantish and not showing people all the little ways that we got to where we got. You know, we like this perception that we're just the super talented artist and that the whole process is very mysterious.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of us we've kind of created this situation where they just assume this isn't happening when we're all doing it. It's like, who's listening to the Spice Girls? Like, I don't know. They sell a bunch of albums, but no one is admitting to it. Who's using reference? Well, everybody, but no one's admitting to it. Yeah. Well, I'm admitting to it. I think we're all admitting to, we all are using reference.
Yeah.
If Norman Rockwell can use reference, you're allowed.
And look back at Vermeer. I mean, look back at like a lot of the masters and stuff like that, and even early stages of photography were used like in the Renaissance, like the pre-photography camera tricks and all sorts of stuff were used, and it's an interesting history that people should look into and get comfortable with. I'll throw in the last thing on this, and then we'll get into the meat of the topic. But to me, I was shocked when I was a younger artist, and I found out that Robert Crumb uses a lot of photo reference.
Yeah,
and you don't see it in his work. Like his work's so noodly and like weird and distorted and crazy. But he was talking about his reason was that if he draws a building from his head, he'll forget the weird box and like the wires and like the weird nozzles that are just there and you can't invent because they're just weird. Like like these things that don't make sense are in reality. And in order to kind of capture like a realistic looking building, looking at a building and being like, oh wait, there's like a weird fixture here and there's like, decay over here, and like for some reason the builders did a bad contracting work, so like there's this section they had to kind of rebuild, like that kind of stuff. You can't invent. And I remember reading him talk about that. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but to me I was like, again, it was another one of those like, well, if Robert Crumb's using it, I think I can get away with using it.
And that's also a good example. And I think if when we get to my examples later from my life that I've done in DVSM, it also shows that there's a range. There can be references like, I don't know, like the Mona Lisa had a model, okay? So like, and that looks probably very much like the Mona Lisa, where you're being very close, okay? But then on the other end of the spectrum, there can be Robert Crumb, where you're looking at probably some real life thing and you're just pulling elements that just add a little something to your very not realistic, very stylized drawing. And then everything in between.
Christopher Runciman said, Gary described me there.
Yeah.
I don't show anyone how I work, and I am always secretly listening to the Spice.
I didn't want to use your name, Christopher. I wasn't going to call you out, but that you are who I was thinking of. For sure.
Wait, what's the podcast we were joke having more with? Was it Comics Lab? You hear that Comics Lab? Shots fired.
That's right.
All right. So okay, let's get into it. So, using photo reference, like for me, has always been really beneficial in like improving the visualization of a work, and I use it very similarly, Gary, to kind of like find characters, and expressions and emotion and feeling, and like nuances and acting and stuff. But if you're starting out, you like to use models, ideally. I guess this will segue into like how you set up your photos and stuff. But like, why not just have live models for every panel that you need to draw in your comic?
You mean like? Do you mean why not, like, as in just have the photographs in your comic, or
no? Like, why not have live models like pose for you?
I do. I recruit my friends, and I mean, Corey. Actually, two of the three Artcasters have posed for me for DVSM 1979.
Yeah, but like without photos, just like a live drawing class where you could have like literal live models. Why not do that? Because I've been asked this by people, like why not just have live models? So I know it's a silly question, but I want to field it. I want to make sure we're covering the photo reference stuff.
Am I not? I'm
like a live drawing class in your studio
Yes.
That
Oh,
You're not
yes.
taking photographs of the models.
Yes.
You're drawing them as they're
drawing
posed.
from life. Oh, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's enormously time consuming for the people you have standing there. That would be, I think, the main, like, look, so let's say, for example, my friend Laura, she sat, or whatever, however you want to describe it, posed, submitted herself for reference photos for Jenny Burke, the main character in DVSM 1997. Jenny is almost throughout that book. Like, there's I needed so many different good examples. I need all sorts of faces, all sorts of views, all sorts of just everything. I need, because I'm not going to be able to go back. You get one bite of the apple. I've got her here to take pictures. I need everything. Even though that was like 2 hours, I got like 300 or 400 photos out of it. Yeah. And then I'm going to be spending a year drawing that book. I can't have her standing back here on a pedestal, okay, now do this for, like, it's just not even feasible. So.
No, and I know it's a silly question, but I've literally been asked that by people.
No, that's, I mean, I
drawing from life. Yeah. Why don't you just draw from life, like literally for your
actually draw
panels?
From life? No,
and
you know what?
Like, I ideally in my fantasy world with a limitless budget, because if you had like a giant bankroll where you could pay people to just, like Norman Rockwell did that for a big chunk of his career, where he'd have like people stage a dinner live in front of him.
To be fair, it is better. It's preferable because there's, 3D, like now you can not only you can fine tune your vantage and you can micro position somebody, you could get exactly what you want, which is usually not what I'm ending up with. Yeah. I'm ending up with an approximation that I'm going to be drawing 4 months later, and I might have different ideas, and I have to kind of now rework. So it's some help, but it's not perfect. If that person was there, I could do it exact. But not only that, there's a clear difference. Have an experienced artist do a drawing based on a photograph, and then that same model in the same position in front of them, it's going to turn out differently because 3D vision, guys. Like, you're just going to have a better sense of those shapes, a better feel for that pose. Yeah. It's just going to be a better result. But yes, it's not feasible.
Yeah, and it has like a life to it when you do like actual drawings from life that you're not going to get from photos. I think another good point is a lot of even illustrators who will use literal live models, not photography, are working on a single illustration.
Yes.
When you're dealing with comic books, it's like the idea of asking anyone to sit still for what's like equivalent to like, hundreds of, if not thousands of different single illustrations, like as panels. That would just be, I like, honestly, if the giant publishers and comics aren't able to do that, how would we as indie creators be able to do that?
Yeah, especially when you're talking about like, for example, DVSM 1979, the one I'm doing right now, has, I can get you this number exactly, about 270 panels in it. And there is one character that's in almost every single one of those panels. That's, that's just, there's no good way to do that. So.
Sweet. Jim said, I'm driving right now and listening to Gary. So hard to keep my eyes on the road. You know what I mean?
I know.
Jim, only listen. Do not, watch and drive.
Jim, I love you, but please keep your eyes on the road.
So, okay, so let's get into the your process for using photo reference and stuff like that. And as you're kind of explaining it, maybe also just get into like how you developed it and stuff, because it's really interesting, and it seems like it's kind of streamlined at this point, but I'm sure it started a lot less. Yeah.
I have it pretty dialed in now. So basically, as I alluded before, I kind of came out of the life and figure drawing school of art. Like that was I was most interested in that. I've always been most interested in drawing figures and human beings. To me, it's the ultimate thing to draw, and I think it's the most challenging. I've been drawing people. I mean, if you count when my first early fumblings with Spider-Man when I was 6, I've been drawing for now like 42 years, you know, and I still feel like I'm nowhere near where I would like to be. You know, it's, and I think it's because I've focused on drawing people. Not only do I think people are just aesthetically interesting, dramatically interesting, I think it is one of the most challenging things to draw because of just the same problem CG people face with Uncanny Valley. We see people all the time. We know when a person doesn't look right. We know when a body doesn't look right. We know when a pose doesn't look right. We know when people's eyes look weird. Like, so that's the bar. I could probably draw a mediocre border collie for you and it would look fine. But if I drew a mediocre person, like, it's, you know, you're going to immediately train on all the things that are not right about them.
Yep.
And that's sort of fun. It's like, it's the chess of drawing. Like, you're never going to touch bottom. You're never going to you're never going to completely master drawing people. So that's always been my preoccupation. When I decided to do DVSM, I, for various narrative reasons, decided I wanted to tell character stories. I wanted them to be very human. I wanted to evoke emotional reactions and sympathetic reactions from the readers. And I felt like to do that, I wasn't Pixar. Like, I couldn't, like, I mean, I needed to actually my path was going to be through realistic looking people. I'm not saying you have to do it realistic people. Like I said, Pixar doesn't seem to need to do that. But I just felt like that's the way I'm going to go. I'm going to try and make this look fairly realistic within my style. And I didn't want, and no offense to people who are fans of this or draw this way, I didn't want to do it the Marvel way. I didn't want all the male characters to look like male comic book character. I didn't want all the female characters to look like female comic book character. I wanted them to look like individuals. I wanted them to look like people you could pass on the street. So to me, the natural approach was, I'm going to recruit friends, or I'm going to use myself as a basis and try to get those little texture pieces in that make each of these people look unique and like a real human being that you might actually meet.
Plus, it's a black and white book, so you wouldn't be able to just change the girl's hair color to red or yellow to differentiate that they're different people.
It's true. Like, I don't have a lot of, it's not like we can tell that this is, you know, this character because they're wearing the blue shirt. You know, it's not like I need to actually make people look distinct. You know, it's almost like casting character actors. You know, you're trying to get a lot of diversity and faces and heights and weights and everything just so people are like very easily recognizable. And so I built it into my process. So I think my comic process is probably like anybody else's, where I write a script and then I thumbnail. I look at the script and come up with my thumbnails. And then I take my thumbnails and arrange them on pages for my page planning. But then before I go on to drawing, like inking, I look at what I have, my plans, and I think, you know, who are people I know who look more or less how I picture this character. Like, and sometimes I try to find someone who looks very close just to make my life easier. But then barring that, like, well, who's someone who's at least in the ballpark? And then I'll change it, you know, when I'm drawing. And you'll see examples of that. I brought some examples tonight. But, and then usually the deal, anyone I've worked with before can tell you, I reach out and I say, hey, how would you like to star in an upcoming exciting issue of DVSM? And usually the deal is, if it's a larger part, first I let them read the script. I want them to know like I don't want any surprises where they pose for me and then they read the book and they find out that like they were a bad guy, or they did something despicable, or they were murdered in a horrible way. Like, you know, I don't want any kind of weird. So if it's a major character, like if it's the Men in Black in the first one, or if it's Jenny or Cynthia in the second one, or like the main character in this, like you get to read the whole script. You get to see like what your character is doing. And plus it helps. It lets people play after. They get excited about it. If you pick the right person, they get into it. They really enjoy this idea of like, I'm going to be like, it's like I'm in a little movie, you know, and there have been people who have showed up with their ideas, which is great for me, where they think like, I think they would do this, or I think they'd make a face like this, or they get really invested in their character. But I usually say like, look, here's the deal. You get a free copy of the comic. You'll get a thank you credit, and I'll buy you lunch. For, you know, I need like 2 hours of taking pictures of you, you know, and I'm going to tell you like, do this, now do this, now do this, now do this. Okay, we're done. Let's go get a burger. And so like, usually the key is like picking someone that you think will be game.
Yeah.
There's a level of lack of self-consciousness that you need. And I think just back to the initial thing, a level of game. Like you need someone who'll be like, sure, that sounds fun. Like and I think it's a fun thing. Like it's hard for me to imagine, but I think if someone came to me and was like, I want to use your likeness for some comic or some movie or something like that. Can I have a couple hours of your time? And now you're going to be this character in this weirdo comic. Like that kind to me feels like in the category of, yeah, that's a fun little thing to say I did once.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just a weird, like, and if you pick the right person, that will be their reaction. It's like, sure, I'll be in a comic. Yeah. Like what? Okay. You know, it's a fun, weird lark, and it's something they'll be able to tell their friends about. Which, by the way, also creates promotion. A few people who have posed for things, like they go tell all their friends, like, I starred in a comic, and like you get some sales on that side because they're going and telling all their friends, like Cynthia, who plays a part, the character Cynthia in DVSM 1997. A friend of mine, Molly, sat in for her. Like her family bought copies, friends of her bought copies. Like because it's like this person they know who's now in a comic, you know. Yeah. So it's fun. So anyway, I take all those pictures. I take them to lunch. I go home. I sort them. I make 1,000 folders numbered by panel. I sort the pictures in each panel, and then when the day of drawing comes, I go into my folders and see like, well, what reference photos do I have? And that becomes my process. So looking at those while I draw.
I love it. And when I was younger and I started using photo reference, and I think this will tie in. And also, by the way, Gary, at any point when you want to pull up the slides, just let me know.
See, I just have examples whenever the time seems, whenever there's a good, like, we're ready. There's no hurry. But
okay. So when I initially was using photo references, I would feel really self-conscious as an artist asking somebody to like pose or something like that. And so I wouldn't get like a super close image to what I wanted to draw. Because I'd just be under pressure to just snap the photo real quick, make it real fast, and like, you know, not stress the person out. Yeah. And often I wouldn't think about like costume or lighting or anything like that. And then I'd have to kind of invent all of that. And then as I've gotten more and more older and like doing art, I'm much more specific about it. So like if there's a prop to me, like a giant skeleton, like I would rather have a giant skeleton. Like, yes, I could use like a little model skeleton and then photo it and like, you know, and then scale it up or whatever. But what better thing than have an actual real thing people can interact with? Or, you know, if they're using a prop, like having something at least close to the prop so I can get like the weight of the muscle, like holding it and like the way they're leaning and that kind of thing. So I'm much more meticulous. Yeah. So I was going to kind of ask about that. Like, how much do you concern yourself with like lighting, costume, props? And I guess in an ideal world, like how far would you go with that?
I go as far as I can reasonably afford. So actually, it's funny you brought that up. So the one I'm working on right now, DVSM 1979, at one point someone's using a rotary phone, And that was the thing where it's like, well, how am I going to draw that? I don't have a rotary form. Well, you know what? On eBay, you can find almost anything. And if you're content to have a non-working version of something, which, because I don't need it to actually work, like you can get something for dollars, like just almost nothing. This is a part of also the prep process, is tracking down, like, what is every kind of physical thing that I can actually get my hands on to have in front of me. This is actually the best thing, because it's like you were joking about before, why not have just a model standing here while I'm drawing? Like, that's not feasible, but I can just buy this phone for $15 and have that phone. And then when I have a model posing using it, I see exactly how big this is in her hands. You know, I see like how's this cord going to drape? I see like, you know, like I don't have to worry so much about scale. Like, how big is this compared to the person?
Yeah.
You know, like I've got that all like figured out. I can look at it with my reference points. I've done that. I think the car in DVSM 1975, which is a 1974 Dodge Monaco, I think. I found like a 1/18th scale, 1/18th scale toy car of that model. And it's like, well, there we go, on Amazon. You can find anything on Amazon. Buy that, and now I have this car to look at, you know. So anytime I can actually get my hands on the thing. And then something, you talked about the sculpting. I had a scene, and this also ties in with lighting. I have a scene in a sequence in the current book that's low lit with a lot of weird direct lighting, and I have aliens in this environment. And that I was just having trouble visualizing, how does light fall on an, like I can picture, I've drawn people enough where I can picture in my head how would light hit a person's face. You know, and I don't worry so much about lighting my human models, because I think I'm familiar enough with human anatomy to figure that out. But yeah, with an alien face, I was like, I don't know if I really have a grasp on what their head is shaped like. So I went to the art store and I bought some clay and I bought a little armature, and I don't know how well it will show up, but like I sculpted an alien head. So then I could not only look at it for like, well, how does it look from different angles, but then I can light this. I can do a flashlight on one side. I don't have one handy, but I can do a flashlight on one side and see like, well, how does the light fall on its face? What if I top light it or bottom light it? And that's another thing about, another example of what I mentioned early on, like being able to discover something, being surprised by something. If I sit and I have my phone, the flashlight on my phone on, and I'm casting it on this clay model, I might see an angle where it's like, oh, that looks really cool. That looks really dramatic. Like I wanna do that. Which I never, like, that's how I found it. I found it by doing the work of going to the art store, buying the clay, sculpting the head, setting it on my desk, moving my phone around it, looking at it and seeing like, oh, that's kind of cool how that looks. Now that will be in the book. So
I love it. I also, it's funny as you're describing it, I'm thinking about it, my own experiences, like, of like, you know, if I have to, you know, even in the past when I've had illustration gigs, if there's like a car sequence, I'm like, or a car that I'm going to have to draw multiple times, it's amazing how many like toy cars and car replicas are out there, and how much just getting one of those, like just ponying up and getting it, especially again, like if you're doing a one-off, pretty much any artist worth their salt can like draw something once convincingly. But it's when you're sequentially working, it's like if you can have a prop, get a prop. Like
get a prop.
It's awesome.
I did have one other thing I want to slip in based on what you said, like the weight of things and how that is important. There is a sequence in this book where a character is carrying a slide projector in a box. And that was another thing. I found a non-functioning version of it on eBay. So $20 now I have the slide projector. And the box was really heavy. And when I was shooting the reference model carrying it, I could tell it was sort of cumbersome and a pain. And for a second, I thought like, well, let's just empty the box so you're carrying the empty box and not having to hoist this. But then I was like, no. Like, I want that look. I want that, like, I want to see in the photos the fact that, like, your one shoulder's lower than the other. Like, and I don't want to have someone pretend it's heavy. Like, that's never going to look the same. Like, actually, I want to just give you the heavy thing, and I'm going to try and take my pictures really fast so you don't have to hold it forever. Like, but that's also something you get out of life drawing, where you see the difference. You see the difference of someone carrying a heavy thing versus pretending to carry a heavy thing versus not even pretending and just carrying a thing. And like, you see it all the time in movies. Someone's like hoisting, like old war movies, they're picking up a rifle. You can tell it weighs nothing when in fact it would have been like 8 or 10 pounds. Like that, I noticed that stuff, I think, because of life drawing.
Especially when they're carrying it with like one hand, just like, no problem. And you're
like kind of just kicking it around, or they're like tossing them to each other and it's like no big deal. Like, you know, like those M1s, those old World War II rifles, enormously heavy. So heavy.
Those are, it makes you wonder if the people filming it had ever used a gun. Like,
right. Yeah.
I love using photo reference, and the one thing that just keeps coming to mind as you're describing this, like compiling, getting a car, like like having people hold heavy stuff. One of the things I love about the assembly process of it is it is almost like gonzo filmmaking. Like it's you're kind of just throwing together. It almost feels like making like a little Ed Wood flick of your own, you know?
Yeah.
And you almost have to be creative like an Ed Wood flick, where you're like, okay, I got to draw this spaceship. I have nothing, like maybe I could use 2 paper plates and like at least get the lighting and the shape. You know, and I think there's something really fun about that, like about that process, you know?
Oh, totally. Well, and you know who I just recently saw The Fabelmans, which is that Steven Spielberg's semi-autobiographic movie. And it's showing him, or is the character sort of playing a version of him as a teenager, enlisting his friends to make little Westerns and war movies and stuff. And I turned to Mary while I was watching. I was like, this is kind of what I do. You know, like I'm sort of recruiting my friends. It's like, you're a soldier, you're an alien, you're a man in black. Okay, go. You know, and like it's sort of the same thing, but it does feel a lot like making a really, like a B movie with your friends, like just recruiting everyone, like, you know, hold this ray gun, you know, it's but I do think it creates a better result. You know, I wouldn't keep doing it if I didn't think the comic was better for it.
Yeah. And I do think, you know, each person's going to use photo reference to a certain extent. There are some styles, you know, and this would be to the credit of people who might be critical of photo reference. There are some styles that are very fluid and organic and have a lot of movement to them that might be like drawn away from if you're holding too close to photo reference. But or like if you're working in a really cartoony fashion, like maybe it's even like, it's funny because my wife works in a very like children's book, like simplified way, and she'll still use a ton of photo reference. Because again, if you're like drawing 50 kids on a school bus, it doesn't hurt to look at some pictures of kids on a school bus.
Well, and every once in a while you see something that you can integrate, no matter what your style is. You know, you'll see a little something that allows you to kind of make that character pop in a way.
Yeah. So I guess before we kind of move on, and at some point, I think we might want to pull up the slides because we're almost at an hour.
Yeah, I can show examples.
But before we hop into those, Scott, Corey, do you guys want to share like some of the times you've maybe taken photo reference, like to what extent you've gone to like kind of get poses or whatever? I guess starting with Scott.
Yeah, well, I've never done kind of what Gary does, where I kind of recruit people. Usually, so certain times, mostly for poses. Like if you've seen my book, my characters are they're a little more cartoony. So I'm not trying to capture likenesses that much, and you know, but poses are a big thing. So a lot of times I'll pose, or I may have, if it's something, I may ask either my kid, or I've asked my son to pose for something before, and my girlfriend or whatever. It just kind of depends, but I've never like actually went out and recruited people other than like immediate family and things like that. And for me, it's mostly poses and things, and I have used, props and things like that. Like you talked about the cars and things like that. I've done that. Sorry. But it depends. I mean, I've definitely, after I've been working on this project for so long, and I guess right now I'm just kind of limited to comics, but in other stuff that I've used, I still don't think I've done like a photo shoot, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I use the other thing I use a lot of is like visual dictionaries. Are you guys familiar with those?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've got a couple visual dictionaries that I refer to, and now some of them might be online, but they're basically, if you're not familiar, it's like just a big thick, almost a dictionary, but it's all just images. And the reason why I think I like those is because it basically takes whatever it is, say if it's a helicopter, and it boils it down to its essence, like the most common version of that. And it will name, the other thing that's cool is it names what all the different parts are and things like that. So, that helps you also with storytelling. So if you have to mention something, the rotor or the this or that piece, and it covers so many different things. So I use those all the time. Those are great. The other thing, like with Young and the Dead, one thing that I find, because it's a sort of a period piece that takes place in the 80s, if you go and you search like 80s fashion, it's not going to come up with the stuff people are actually wearing. It's going to come out with the most outlandish stuff, the stuff that people remember because it was so crazy and stuff, but it's not going to be what the average person was wearing. So for that, like I'll go to like yearbooks and things like that, because then you get to see what people are actually wearing. So those are some of the kinds of references that I typically use. And then I'll use a lot of, whether it's on like Pinterest for poses or like, Google image search or certain things. Like I'm working on the next issue of Young and the Dead right now. And I'll just, because for me, the most complicated thing for me is just like, I guess like you were talking about kind of, Gary, the hand acting and the stuff like that, or are people holding something like that? Especially like sometimes I can pick up something and either take a picture or just look at myself holding it. But a lot of times I'll just search for poses. Like, what was I looking for? Like, there was a scene like somebody jumping off of a fence. So I'll kind of look at that, and I'll look at a few different ones, and I'm like, I kind of like that, but I don't like the way the guy's arm is, and I'll kind of make the arm look a little different or whatever. So I usually try to change it, especially if I'm looking off something like a Google image search, because it's like that's what everyone would look at. But then again, I'm searching for things that probably not everyone's searching for, so I don't know if anyone's going to look at that and say, that's from that Google or image search. So I try to change it a little bit, and that's just because it's easy. It's makes it's a little faster. I mean, if I really want, Gary takes the time to actually set the scenes and everything. And if I wasn't as lazy as I am, I might do that too.
I think I'm usually looking for something very specific. Yeah. So it's hard for me to Google image search, and especially when I need a series. Like if I want like characters from all sorts of different angles doing all sorts of different things. If I need a one-off, like I know in 97, there was like a combat scene where I had soldiers running around and shooting. Like that was, I could sit and Google like, soldier, American soldier, and kind of come up with something that's like, okay, I can use that for this panel. But for the main characters, that's usually, it's so specific what I need that it wouldn't help me. That's a good example of like jumping a fence. That's tough. And that's something that it's like, good luck visualizing that very
And good luck getting that, because like, okay, like if you're hiring actors, like, okay, I want you to jump over this fence.
Yeah, see,
yeah,
and they would be able to do that. I probably,
and then you're like having to go back to photo class and be like, how do I set the shutter speed to capture action?
Well, and also you're driving your friend to the ER after they break a leg going over this fence. So like, I think for something like that, what I would be inclined to do, and this, I think someone was asking suggestions. I would go to YouTube and say guy jumping fence, and you'll get a million videos from all different angles of all different successful and unsuccessful attempts over this fence. And what's great about video is you can pick the frame where it's like, that's the one. That's the one that's most helpful to me. But it also shows you the whole motion, so you get a sense of what that actual continuity is.
Exactly. So you can scroll through it and find the point of action that would be the most intense, you know. That's YouTube is a great resource. I found a schooner that way. Like there was a certain Victorian era sailboat I was looking for like hours, and I ended up finding this guy who had restored a Victorian racing boat. And it was perfect. It was like, oh my gosh, every angle of this boat I have to draw is on this silly YouTube video of like some guy out there who's like passionate about Victorian boats and restored one.
I've got, you know, a dinosaur walking around in this current issue. And so I have a whole private playlist on my YouTube of emus walking. You know, just to see like that walk cycle, because like if you want to find a horse walk cycle, like there's 8 million references, but good luck. Like, you know, if you want to find a ostrich, emu, or cassowary walk cycle, something like that, like artists haven't sat and like dialed that in like they have horses or people. So I resorted to YouTube, and I'll call up every video I can find of an ostrich walking just to get a sense of like what that looks like.
That's a really good call. And that actually ties into like one tip too, which is like often like, you know, if you pull from other reference, like for instance with dinosaurs, if you pull from too many references of existing dinosaurs, that's going to be a treacherous area, because it's going to be like the certain interpretation of dinosaurs or whatever.
You're referencing an actual a specific artist's take on what that. Yeah, that's fortunately mine. I think I've deviated. Like I've really tried to go my own way with mine, but it's hard.
But that ostrich thing is smart, because it's like you could probably watch some CG stuff where they've recreated, you know, a similar, or if not even the dinosaur and it moving. But what are those CG artists looking at to make the movement? Probably ostriches or other animals like that, right? So it's like, I think that idea that you would go to that source like of something that moves similarly is a really good, I think, tip for people, especially when inventing characters like you know, dragons or dinosaurs or something like that. Like,
and you're getting the basics. You're not iterating somebody else's thing. You're doing your own. Like, you know, I needed to come up with a skin texture for a dinosaur in the last issue, and I think I ended up pulling like. And sounds like a joke, but it's completely serious. The texture of the skin on a rhino's butt. Like I found all these like high-res images of like animal skins, and it happened to be the rump of a rhino was exactly the texture. I thought like, I'm going to do that. That's what it is, you know? But that's the thing where now I'm doing my thing. I'm not looking at that dinosaur in Jurassic Park and drawing my version of that. Now we're getting really removed. I'm trying to find my own way there.
That's amazing. And also it is funny that, again, if people looked at your like search history and they didn't know you were an artist, they'd be like, this guy's a lunatic.
Yeah.
So Frank I just want to address chats real quick. So Frank in the chats was asking if he and I are fighting, and he said, you haven't answered my unwanted request in a while. I have no idea what you're talking about, Frank. You're awesome. So
it may be a joke. Frank's been dropping a lot of jokes, so that might be.
Because honestly, I was like, I honestly haven't checked my messages in a while, so I'll check. And then he was also saying slide projectors. Haven't seen one of those in ages. Cannons aren't usually lightweight. That's totally true.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have an opaque projector too. I don't use it so much for comics, but like if I'm doing a mural or something like that, and so
if I thought about it, I would have dragged it in here to show you. It's got a really cool. You'll see it in DVSM 1979 out in probably April, but it's this 70s slide projector with an awesome Kodak cover. It looks 70s, like it has faux like a wood print on the sides. It's amazing.
You need to just for fun recreate that sequence in Mad Men with the carousel.
Yes. Actually, it's a carousel. It's a different model because it's a different year. Of course, I figured out like what model would be available this year, but it's a carousel Kodak slide projector. It does not work. That's how I got it cheap. But it's for my purposes, it's fine. So.
That is awesome. Frank also said, I noticed this is episode 356. If you go back and watch one episode a day, you'd see a year's worth of Artcasters. I will point that out.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we have done enough to where you could literally do a year of Artcasters and watch a different Artcasters episode every year. And by the time you're caught up, you will probably unsubscribe to us. But please do. You'll just hate us all. Okay, and then I think there was, let's see. Jim was I think we already addressed this, but still it's worth bringing up what he brought up because I think that's a really good point. He said, can you speak on some possibly unexpected online reference resources like Zillow for houses, sites for clothing, room design, etc.? I totally
Google image search. I mean, not Google image, but what's that? Google Earth?
Yeah.
Google Earth.
Google Earth is amazing.
Yeah.
And also, I love the idea of Zillow for houses because they're houses that are already staged with furniture and stuff like that.
That's good.
They are, though. I would caution if you want to make it look lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Zillow is not gonna. That's someone's model home. This is someone they cleaned and they got all their shit out of the room before they took pictures. That's. I would encourage you, and this is just a good practice, not only with life drawing, but drawing spaces. It's a good exercise to practice being observant. Like just walk into your own rooms and look around. It's like, what is this that makes this look like a room? It's not just the couch and the TV. It's this empty cup that's been sitting on the coffee table. It's this, it's these little details. Those are the things that will really make something look interesting and not like a Zillow picture. So.
And actually Jim is a good example of that because like he'll have a sequence that's like the character because there's like a used pack of cigarettes like laying on the bed and the bed's disheveled and like there's all these little details like weird magazines that would be something this character would read kind of half turn because the character's clearly not really even reading it. Like it's like things like that where it'll give you just this full window. I love that about Jim's cartoons where his backgrounds will give you a full window into the character you're seeing before you've even heard them speak.
No, he's really good at designing. Well, he's really, really good with a lot of his art, but he's really good at designing spaces for sure.
I like it. Oh, and Frank was asking you, Scott, do you have a video about using reference for photos and where to find them?
Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure there's an episode on 100 Days. On Making Comics 101 on references. Yeah,
I love it.
Where I probably talked about some of the stuff I just mentioned now because those are some of my staples. So
I love it. And then Son said, who is the artist on the thumbnail? Who is that artist, Gary?
That would be me. That would be Gary Hodges. Who's me.
And then he was saying the black and white ink drawing. Oh, that was Gary Hodges as well.
Yes.
And then I think that catches us up with the chats. So Corey, anything to add with like how you've utilized photo reference? Because I know you do some really interesting processes where like even the time, the one thing that comes to mind, maybe this can cue you up for it, is like when you literally bought like a block full of bugs. Like it's like those I don't know what it's called. It's like bugs in plastic or something.
What?
But he used that for illustrations, and maybe that can kind of start off the thing.
Oh. Yeah, see?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we can't hear you.
We
Corey.
can't hear you.
Is this a prank I tried to start at the
He's
beginning of the
pranking
thing?
you
coming
back. This is payback. No, so you're still not. Yeah, you're still not there.
Oh no, we've lost Corey.
He must. Oh,
It's showing you
Is
as
it?
muted.
How's that
There we
now?
go.
Okay,
There we
you're
go.
good.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a. So I do have several different things, and these are not expensive, but not a lot of people draw insects as much as I do. But I liked this idea because this plus a magnifying glass
Oh,
is going to focus, but
okay.
yeah. Anyway,
That's awesome.
so yeah, so I'll get this plus a magnifying glass, and then I have reference books, like specifically on things. So since we're talking about insects, like I've got books full of different insects, and you kind of mix and match them and do different things. But I mean, I'll get things. The history of Harley Davidson. I've got books on like seafaring things, and what I like about using books instead of using internet searches, though I still use internet searches too. But what I like about that is you're more likely to get stuff that is more unique, like especially if your books are out of print, and so you buy them like old or in a used bookstore or things like that. And then there's something about having like physical things in your hand, and so I go with the model stuff. A couple of YouTube tricks is if you're on an iPhone, you can record your screen. A YouTube video at 0.25%, and then record your screen, then that makes scrubbing it back and forth for the exact moment that you want really easy. And then you can screenshot that frame of that video, and then you have a still image that you can do. And then I will also shoot things on my phone in slow motion. And so I have a selfie stick that I mounted to. I'm trying to think of where that is. I don't know where it is right now. Anyway, I have a selfie stick that I mounted to collapsible feet. So there's these little tripod legs. They're about that big. For about 12 inches of space in my trunk or my backpack, at any point in time, I can pop that open, throw that down, put a rock on it or a sandbag or something, and then you can shoot anything anywhere. And you can shoot stuff in slow motion if you want as well, but you don't have to. But then you can also scrub through that. And so I'll scrub through videos and then screenshot the stuff that I like. And I would be the guy that would attempt to jump over the fence or whatever. Like I'm the guy that like, will do that. So I'll set up like, I'll drag a mattress out into the living room and jump off of the countertop to try to get the shot in the air, or whatever, that type of thing, if I've got the time for it.
Which again, like it, years later when they're digging through the archaeological record
Right.
of our past, they'll be like, there was this strange sect of people taking like these strange, like I was thinking about the Barbarian book that I had to illustrate, and just the
Right.
photos from that where I'm like shirtless, like, and I'm like
Mhm.
twig thin. I have no barbarian build, but I'm doing like barbarian poses. It's like if anyone stumbled upon those, or Corey like jumping onto a mattress just randomly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the first one you'll see when we get to examples. Like there's a guy I use for all my alien reference photos. My friend Kevin, who helps, again, Kevin doesn't look anything like an alien, but what he gets me there is he's very lean and he's very like toned, and it like in the way I draw them, they're very like there's zero body fat and you can see their muscles, and like so it helps me. And he's also very
is he the one on the thumbnail?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
He's
Should we
a
pull it up?
smaller guy. What's that?
Should we
can
pull it
put
up. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
so
sure.
while we're talking about it. So oh, and I was gonna do this
Let's
one
see
where
here.
we can see us.
Well, here we'll just
Oh,
go through it. But
where is it? Not this one. This one. There we go.
There we go. Oh, this is. I just pulled a few just to show like the range, not only of examples, but how close or far I'm deviating from the reference. So this is one that I would say is fairly close. It's like I'm not deviating too dramatically, but this is my friend Jeremy who posed as Ruben Garcia, the Man in Black in DVSM 1975. And this is also like. I don't remember if this specifically was an example of it, but it could be an example of discoveries where I'm like, you're in the passenger seat, you got your elbow up on, and then we thought like, you know what, let's just go out to the car just to get you like where I want you. And it's like, so you're just driving along and you're kind of like tired and you're kind of just talking and thinking. And he just did this. And it was like, you know what? I hadn't really thought of that, but I love it. I love how that looks like. I'm taking a picture of that, so that's an example.
To add to that discovery, that's another thing that's great about doing references is sometimes you'll thumbnail something that kind of works, and then the second you have somebody make that pose, you're like, this doesn't work. Like, and so you're saving yourself the art headache later on where you're like having to try to make a faulty thumbnail work.
Right.
That's anyhow, or like you were saying, a better discovery. Sorry, let's continue, but that was great.
What I usually do when I usually have my idea. So I have my thumb and I'll say, do this, and I'll get a picture of that. But then very often I'll say, especially if I'm looking at it and realizing like, that's not looking how I imagined it would look. I'll tell them like, how would you do it? If this was really you, how would you do it? And then that's the thing, like not how would you drop it? Like if you were carrying this thing, how would you be carrying it? And then that's sometimes when you see something that looks more authentic, and you're like, okay, why don't we do that instead? But
that's also why Corey Kerr's character is always doing jazz hands in like every scene in the next Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Yep. You're like, Corey, what would you do? And he's like, anyhow,
that's it. That's my go-to.
In DVSM 75, I did a lot of selfies, not only for old Man in Black, George, as you see here, but also for all the aliens in 75. I did all the posing for the aliens. And those are the embarrassing pictures that are somewhere in my iPhoto of me, like, because all my, they got their kind of long fingers and I'm kind of like snarly. So I'm like doing this and like, so there's a lot. But this is to me like a moderate example where I don't think Old Man in Black looks very much like me, but I'm using myself as a sense of like, well, where's the hand and where's the face, and then I'm changing him a lot to not look like me, but I'm sitting in. So here's Kevin. Kevin does all the aliens. This is a sneak preview of DVSM 1979, and it shows like he's doing there's multiple aliens in a lot of these books, and he's all of them. So, and that gets kind of interesting when you're doing the photos too. It's like, okay, I shorthanded it for him. I was like, this is the ray gun alien, like one that's carrying a ray gun, and this one is the befuddler alien, the one that has the big gas weapon. And like, so like ray gun alien is now talking to befuddler alien, so you're looking and saying something to him. He's kind of being thoughtful and like replying back. So he's playing both sides of this, and I'm standing there and just saying like, okay, now do this, now do this, now you're doing this, now you're responding to what you just did, and then it just cobbles like I'm using that. And again, Kevin, if you're watching, looks nothing like an alien, totally reasonable looking human being. But again, you can probably see the little elements there.
Yeah.
Where like I was looking at the picture and I was like, there's something there. There's something. I want to use this a little bit. And like, I'm going to pull this a little bit,
Yeah. It's like you can see the areas where you're pulling from the planes on his face a little bit. And then, particularly just like, you know, his brow expressions and like some of the subtleties, but just extrapolating that to an alien. That's really interesting to see.
And change, like, how am I pushing the anatomy? And that's also where you go in and correct, like, not correct, but you go for what you're actually going for. Like, if you look at the first one, you know, he's kind of doing a gritted teeth thing, which was fine. But when I was doing it, it's like, no, I want to do it more like mid pronunciation. So you're deviating completely with the mouth. But yeah, with the brow, it's like there was some brow acting there that I want to integrate, you know. So
Frank Salazar was saying, Gary to Kevin, I need an alien laying in bed seductively.
Those pictures are you'll see that when you buy DVSM 1979 on sale soon. This was in the thumbnail. This is another one where it's like, okay, ray gun alien is doing this. I advanced a little bit. Befuddler alien is like turning on a little. Why am I advancing here? What is this? Befuddler alien is turning on a lamp on his helmet, you know, and like that's just sort of the minimal direction. This was another one where it was a discovery where when in the ray gun version, I was like, you're looking into a cage, it's really dark, you can't see, and you're kind of squinting. And he did this sort of interesting like tilt of his head to the left, like he was looking like kind of that. And that was something I didn't have in my thumbnail, and I was like, I like that. I like that kind of strange. It kind of gives that impression of like you're looking at something, you know, really kind of leaning in to look at something. And so that was integrated into the final panel. You can tell that alien's kind of tilting his head a little bit.
And that ties in to like the advantage of like having the ray gun too, because when you're holding something like that, you're usually tilting your head somewhat anyway. So this is really, I'm glad you put these together. It's fun to kind of see. It helps. I think it'll help people kind of see how.
Visualize what we're talking about. And again, you can see Kevin doesn't look anything like an alien, but you see these little bits where I saw something in the pose. Like I liked how he'll be happy that I'm saying this. I liked how his bicep looked in the middle one. You know, like I liked it with like the hand up, like doing the switch. And I was like, and so then that finds its way into the drawing. You know, but then there's other things. It's like, well, this is an alien. He's not going to look anything like this. I got to change this. But it's just enough to add something. Mm-hmm. There's a little something in that final result. But so this is, I think, also an example of more of a deviation. This is my friend Brian, who sat in for Dr. Peter Kovitz, who's a research scientist and director in DVSM 1979. It shows not only am I changing how he looks, but also like changing, like deciding I want a different expression. You know, like I think I want him not lifting his eyes up. I want him to continue. He's writing, and I want him like talking while he's looking and writing. You know, so but again, it gets you in the ballpark. It gets you a feel of like and I remember with this one what I really liked, the resting on, like I'm doing right now, like resting on your hand and how it creates this sort of bunching up of the flesh on your cheek. That was like the aha moment. Like from this reference was like, I like that. I like how that looks. And you can see that in the drawing like that. And though the raised eyebrow he did, like while he's, you know, this kind of weird sort of wry, like raising his left eyebrow. I liked that too. That's not all I had in the direction, I think, was you're writing, you're kind of resting your face on one hand. You're in a bad mood and you're talking to someone. You know, and I think that's when I snapped the picture. But then, like, it's like, again, ballpark. There's bits of that I can really use that I really like. But then I'm going to tweak it a little bit more, you know, to get more what I'm envisioning, you know, on the page. Yeah. These people are doing me a favor. And the last thing I want to do is be like Stanley Kubrick or David Fincher looking for 8,000 takes. It's like, no. Like, you know, purse your lips and just a 10% more, you know, like, no. Like if you're getting sort of there, good enough, I can draw. I'll get you the rest of the way with the drawing. Yeah. But, like, give me something. Give me something I can work with.
So I love that you pointed that out, because if you're doing this with friends, and especially if you want these friends to collaborate with you often, because I do a lot of similar things, with staging and family members, friends, stuff like that all have pose. Don't be a dick. Like, be nice to these people, especially if they're doing it like for beer or for free. Like,
you want it to be a good experience.
Yeah, don't
like
be
you
Hitchcock.
Want it, yeah, don't be Hitchcock. Yeah, like you want them to feel like it was fun. Like it was this weird thing they did, and it was kind of fun. You know, like that's what you hope. Yeah, I think you need to be very sensitive. And that also, like, we could do a whole separate video on like how to talk to your models, how to get what you want from them, how to help.
We'll call it the casting couch with
Gary Hodges. That'll be the name of it. But like, that you need to think about. You don't want to make someone regret they helped. But so for getting away from life examples, for some things, so the MarsBot in '97 is a very complicated shape. It was one I was very anxious about drawing. I made it in SketchUp. So I basically had a virtual model I could manipulate and look at from every angle. It wasn't posable, but at least gave me enough to kind of get a sense of like what things would sort of look like from different angles. The little alien there is a scale reference. It's another important thing of reference. Like I said with the phone, like how big is the handset in someone's hand? You're going to have scenes where like your robot is in a panel with an alien. Like how tall is the alien compared to the robot? And are you keeping that consistent? But that's how I was doing that. And then also in '97, I have Deinonychus, which is a kind of a raptor type dinosaur. Like, where did I get that from? I found a toy that was sort of close, and that was the starting point. It's a posable action figure. It's not the same species. I had to make some changes, and it doesn't really look like that. But it's like an art doll. It's at least a posable model. Like now I at least can kind of get there, take photos of this model, and then do what I need to do drawing. So.
Yeah, like and that's something to consider out there, guys. Like if you're doing like a comic that's just gonna have a ton of like I don't know, like military or something, it might not hurt to just pull out the G.I. Joes. Like it's
Yeah. Yes. No. And by the way, like those 1/6 scale military action figure people, like they're nuts about that stuff. And there's every permutation of any kind of branch of military you can imagine in a highly accurate 1/6 scale figure. You might pay $100. Like it might be expensive, but you're going to get a perfect little model of a soldier that you can pose however you need, and that's with accurate equipment and how it's worn and all that. Like that's pretty handy and pretty cool. But anyway, those were my visual examples of ways I've used reference in the DVSM comics.
I've got two.
You cut out again. I don't know what's going on with the. Okay, hold on.
We've got you now, but it like blinked.
I don't know what's going on with my mic. So this is Sticky Bones. I backed this on Kickstarter a while ago, but it's one of the best posable things, and it has magnets everywhere, and those magnets you can actually put the entire figure like on.
That's great.
That's amazing,
and it'll hold.
Yeah.
He says as he drops it.
And it'll hold. It'll never fall.
It'll never fall. That's very cool.
That is really amazing.
But that one, and then this is the collapsible feet. You can get these just really inexpensively. And so this little thing is great, like as a portable. I just take this with me wherever.
Now, what are you using that for?
So,
just to put the camera on to take photos?
Yeah, you can do the phone attachment here.
Okay.
And this is just a cheapo selfie stick that I threaded on top of the.
Okay.
It's called a monopod feet. Buy a monopod because those are expensive. You buy like a cheap, crappy selfie stick for monopod feet, and they have the same threaded things. But nice. Those are good as well.
That reminds me something that someone might. I'm showing this one. The way I took this picture is I picked up on Amazon. It's probably $20 or something. You can get one of these little selfie clickers. It connects by Bluetooth to your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the selfies of me, usually it's like, like that one, I'm probably doing this. And in my other hand, I've got the clicker. So I've set up on the little tripod, I've set up my phone and I sit and I'm and then look. This is a lifesaver if you're doing a lot of selfie work.
Yeah.
It's especially because it's small, you can palm it. There's photos of me holding like fake rifles and stuff where I can have it like in my hand and you don't even know and click it to take pictures.
See, I just put it on video and then I find the still, but that works.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that
if you've got
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you have TVs in your house that you can mirror your phone to, then if you're doing a shot like Gary was just showing where you can't look at your phone to see what the pose is, you can screen mirror your phone to the TV, look at the TV, and then pose yourself.
Yeah.
That you can get like side, back, top, or low angles where you're not looking at the camera, but you can pose yourself by looking at the TV that you're mirroring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also just annoy your significant other to take photos of you posing as well. Which, by the way, if people are out there and they're just watching this and they're not artists, if you end up in a relationship with an artist, especially an illustrator, don't be surprised when they're asking for weird poses or for you to take pictures of them making weird poses, because this is the game.
No, that's you don't realize it, but you've basically entered yourself into a weird devil's bargain where now, I mean, like Mary sat for hundreds of photos for this one I'm working on now, doing all sorts of crazy things and making crazy faces. And, it's just, I mean, that's part of it, but
but it's also the fun of it. So I think that's great. I also think that's a good thing to remember too. Like if you're out there and you don't have access to other people to like reference, even if you're drawing a character that looks nothing like you, like they're not the same gender, they're like still just to have the pose and the gesture and the expression, it really helps as a basis to kind of work from and riff off of. And another thing I don't think we've really gotten heavily into it is that I figured out a real quick hack to is lighting. I like to try to do some more significant lighting with my references just to get like a little bit of an idea of like shadow and environment. And if I can match the lighting in the environment, that's ideal too. And what I found was the cheapest thing I could find that works really well for photographing lighting that's not like professional lighting or anything like that is just one of those garage lights at Home Depot. They get really hot. It's just like a little
construction lights.
Yeah, it's a construction light.
Yeah, those are rad.
They go hot, but they it's almost as good as like a film lighting.
No, they're very those lights specifically are incredibly bright, and so you could bounce them off a wall or a ceiling to diffuse them or put them dead on. But unlike a lot of lights that you might get that aren't professional lights, those construction lights are they don't cycle through different colors and they don't flicker. Yeah, they're awesome, and they're sometimes you can pick them up for like.
Are they like halogen or something? Why are they so bright? Why are they so hot?
Just like I think it might be halogen. I have no idea, but the neat thing is it's pure white light. Like it's not yellow light at all. And Corey's right. You can get them for like $20 at like Home Depot. And they're just a little like they're about that wide. They usually have a grill over them, which you can pull off. Corey's showing you exactly the one I have too. And I use those for photo references all the time. The nice thing too is they're really easy to just don't touch the top because they do get hot. Like you will.
There's a reason
your
that
hand.
There's a cage here.
Yeah. And you might have to pull off the cage to take photos. So like, just do not get near that light for like an hour after you've shot with it. But the beauty of it is you can stage it anywhere. And so if you're like having a scene, that you really need to quickly shoot where like people are watching TV and you want front lighting, you can just put it in the front, or if you need somebody to move in the room, but you want the lighting to remain the same, you can just move the lighting instead of moving like the whole room to,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
sometimes you need an angle that you can't fit in your like living room or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and then the last thing that I don't know if we mentioned, unless you guys have other tips for lighting stuff that you've used. Do you guys have any other suggestions for lighting?
I've only done it small scale, like when I've so for my play model, I have one of these little
That's so rad.
webcam lights, and like this, it's blown out here, but you know, you can sort of end up with, yeah, you can't tell because it's so blown out, but I've used just that or my phone, you know.
Nice. What's that, Corey?
So this is used for toy photography, but you can also like there's a web app, and so you can go in and you can dial in the color temperature and the brightness, or you can slave this to a DSLR camera flash.
Wow.
And it's got a magnetic back to it. And so you can mount this on anything metal. They're kind of expensive. I got this from work, but it's called
it's called a what?
Lume, Lume, Lume
Nice.
Cube. And it's also threaded so that if you want to mount it to your selfie stick monopod feet setup, then you can have this kind of portable as well. But the best part about it is just being able to, you know, stick it on the hinge of a door or your fridge, or, you know, the magnetic part. These are
Oh, you cut out.
just USB rechargeable.
Oh,
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then I have this. This is one of the best lights. It's great for drawing too. But it's just, you touch it and it gets brighter or darker.
There you go.
Yeah. It's pretty good for like dimmable light and whatnot. But I mean, I like it because it desk mounts clamp. It has like a desk mount clamp. And so you can put it on like tables or anything that has like an edge that's under like 2 or 3 inches thick. And it's just wall mounted plug, but it's nice because sometimes you want that like strip light thing. And so if you want to, you could do that, or you could put a snoot on it where you've got like basically gobos on either side of that strip light, so that you're getting a very narrow beam as well. And you just use construction paper or things like that. So I don't know if you guys want to get into like snoots and grids and gobos and stuff, but
we might have to do like an episode on, I mean, I do think this might be a topic worth mining again. Scott, are there any like lighting tips you've like used, or have you used lighting when you're doing photo reference and stuff?
Yeah, typically I'll use lighting. You know, sometimes one thing that I've done before, like I've taken like a posable figure, kind of like the one that Corey has, or just like an action figure, and sometimes I'll paint them like a matte gray, like a primer, because usually they're kind of glossy, and that affects the lighting. So if you're doing that, sometimes, you know, it helps to kind of paint those figures like a matte primer.
Mm-hmm.
Smart. So the light kind of, yeah.
Because even if it's a simple, like, it's too far for me to reach, but you know, the little art mannequins, you know, the wood color, they're kind of a matte finish, but even that, sometimes it might make sense if you kind of hit it with some primer or whatever. But those are, that's really good to just shine your light source on it. I was looking at some of Gary's reference, and I was kind of surprised that it looked like you were just adding the lighting afterwards, because like
usually,
yeah. So I was kind of curious why, or maybe you just didn't figure out what you wanted that lighting to look like. But it seems like if you lit it, if you lit it at the time, then you'd have that in your reference.
Would have been nice. Yeah, no, there were a few. Sometimes when I know it's like, there were a couple, I didn't include them, but there were a couple sequences where I knew characters would be backlit or something, and when I did some reference shooting, I made sure that was the case. But there were a lot where I just really didn't have a clear picture of how I was even going to draw some of this stuff yet.
Yeah.
So that's another example of, like, you know, sometimes you get a reference photo, it's not exactly what you want, but it's good enough, and you'll take it the rest of the way drawing. that was the same thing with that. It's like, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this yet. When I figure it out, I'll just have to, use my drawing powers rather than, look at exactly how that would look in life. But that is a big part of why I wanted to sculpt this, was to have that versatility on the day of drawing. When I'm sitting there and I realize, like, you know what, I think I want the lighting like this, then I can pull this out and light it and get a sense of what that would look like. So,
okay, so there's one more thing I think we have to just very briefly touch on because we're almost at the end.
Yes.
But I feel like this needs to be brought up too. One of the big advantages of having models in front of you, or I guess you could also make the same argument for like a 3D model of what you're using would have the same advantage, is viewpoint. So like when I'm doing photo references of people, I usually have like a good step ladder near me so I can take high angle shots.
Yes.
I'm half of the time, like sometimes I'm laying down on the floor and shooting up. And, going through weird extents, like sometimes if I'm having somebody jump through the air and it's a weird pose, I might have them lay on the ground doing the jump. So that they can hold out their legs and arms as in fact, actually Jacob's apartment, there's like a swimming sequence. And I literally had the model for that lay down on the floor and just swim. And then, you again, you use your drawing powers to kind of iterate from there.
There's a sequence in this book I'm working on where someone is running. And there's no good way there's two ways to approach that. You can either do a video and then find the frame you want. But if you really want someone doing a flat out run and you maybe don't want to worry about someone tripping or falling, or the layout isn't great, or, you're in a room so they can't really do like a run. I had her plant one foot. Like I knew like what I kind of wanted, like, I want one where the heel is hitting and I want the other foot in the air. So have one, like, go ahead and hold this wall here and just kind of tip your foot up like this. Yeah, that's good. Take a picture. Now for this foot, like kick this leg back, and I'll look at both those when I have to draw the run, and you weren't actually running, but I have the elements I need to cobble it.
A really good thing for a lot of motion. Edward Muybridge was like one of the original photographers that a lot of animators did, and he shot all kinds of things in motion. So he shot people running and walking and going up the stairs, but he has it's spelled M-U-Y Bridge, and so he has horses. He's got different animals.
I think I'm probably familiar. Yeah,
the guy is he the guy that photographed Friends as he threw a tennis ball at them?
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
Okay, because there's a whole series of 1970s photographs. They're amazing, and like the photographer literally just chucked tennis balls at people and then photographed it as they're like, and it's these intense photos where you have like faces just, it's insane because they're just trying to avoid getting hit by a tennis ball. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same guy because I think he was earlier than the 70s. Yeah,
I think I know who you're talking about, Corey. I think, because he did all those studies of people walking away, walking toward.
The cycles. Okay, now
I know. 1830 to 1904 is.
Yeah, all the cycles.
Yeah, but it's like photograph storyboards of. Yeah, just the fact that he did it in like the late 1800s, early 1900s is crazy.
It's super helpful, especially if you need to visualize and you're never going to get a good reference of the something specific. But it does get tricky. Like I knew I wanted someone running and kind of going around a corner, so you're getting them like 3/4,
right?
Like going, where it's like a lot of times with art references. This is why sometimes YouTube can be more helpful. With art references, it's very like Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Like you're seeing it from the front and from the side. It's like these draftsman drawings, where it's like, well, I need something a little more in between, or I need something higher angle or lower angle or whatever. And that's where
a lot of those art references are like they use art models. And so they're like, okay, hold this pose, and they're used to holding that pose for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they'll photograph, and they might even photograph like 360 degrees of that pose, but it's not a natural pose. It's like, okay, I can sit in this state for half an hour. It's like, that's not how people move. That's how.
And also, like professional life models, it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, you just take off your clothes and sit for a painting. It's like, no, like try to sit still without moving an inch for like an hour, much less for 10 minutes. And they actually condition themselves to be good at it, because a lot of early life models will pass out. Like they'll literally pass out from like
I was an art model my freshman year.
You what?
I was an art model my freshman year, and they earned their money.
They do. I did it my freshman year. I was in a life drawing class where they allowed people to rotate through if they wanted to give it a shot. It's really hard. And it's, if you take one of those classes, generally it's the same, maybe half dozen models rotating through, and you'll end up having favorites, usually because some are better or worse.
Right.
You wouldn't think it's not an easy job. And to get one, and it's not just being able to hold still. That's like the minimum requisite, which a lot of them can't hit. But then someone who can hold still and do interesting poses and kind of know where their body is and know how to present something. Like, ideally, you want someone who's not only a good life model, but is also an artist themselves. And they know what's visually interesting, for the body.
I just wanted to show these tennis ball shots because they're amazing.
Is that what that is? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So it's a photographer. I looked him up because I was like, well, what was that guy's name? Robert Longo. And he literally just got people to dress up as like businessmen. And then I think he had like a tennis ball shooter and just got these insane poses,
That's pretty cool.
I mean, obviously with their consent, but so action poses too. Maybe throw a tennis ball at the people you're shooting, as long as it's with consent.
Right. No, and I think I'm familiar with one that Corey is holding up there. But
yeah. Where is that one?
I'm trying to find the.
Did he do the horse cycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Same guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got people. He's got people jumping. He's got people, and it's like, it's some legit action for, 150 years ago.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the Art of Disney book, like the original one, had frames from that they were actually looking at with a lot of animations.
Yeah.
From that photographer. So that guy's, what was his name again?
His name is, I think you would pronounce that Edward. But it's Edward.
If you'd given me 1,000 years, I wouldn't have gotten that Edward spelled right.
Edward.
Yeah, right.
So Ead Weird.
Ead Weird. Weebridge. Weebridge.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a fun talk, and it's funny whenever we do a topic where I'm like, I don't know how we're going to fill an hour, and then it's like, how do we stop?
Yeah, no, I think you could do several episodes about. Mm-hmm. Well, and like I said, I think maybe even you'll be the guy, because we've talked about how I would like to draft you for the next DVSM, and maybe that's something we can somehow live stream or something, to kind of show like behind the curtain, like how generally I approach it and what it looks like. I actually find it's something I've talked about a little bit in my streams. Working with live models, especially for at length, like if it's a major thing, is really rewarding. I really enjoy it. I look forward to doing it, and I get excited about involving someone else in the process, because generally speaking, I'm doing everything myself, and that's the one area where in a way I'm getting some collaboration. And I'm also always excited for those little discoveries like we were talking about. Like, I know every time I sit with someone and take a few hundred photos, there's going to be some gold in there that I never would have gotten there on my own. But now that I see this, it's like, oh, that's going to make that panel look really cool.
Yeah. And I think I think from all of us, we'd probably all recommend, if you're an artist and you haven't experienced drawing from life, find a local life drawing place. Don't go for the good looking models. Find the person who's like the old wrinkly person where there's just this crazy story in their face and you have to draw them. It is such a pleasant experience drawing from life. A motorcycle reference.
These books, if you go to Barnes and Noble, they have like these photograph books of different things, and they are perpetually on clearance.
Oh, totally.
But like there's and they have everything, and it's like, so this is just motorcycles, but they've got every different type of vehicle.
Yeah. Oh, you got cut.
What's that?
Yeah.
You cut out again.
Oh, yeah. They just, anyway, but they're always on clearance. I have so many of these because you can pick them up for between $5 to $10. And so every time I go to the mall or whatever, I slip past the clearance section and see if there's any reference books that
Great. Yeah, I think that's a great tip. And oh man, we haven't even gotten into like the fun stuff, like one of my favorite things, which is like vintage advertising and pulling from that to make typography and layouts, like vintage orange crate labels or classic Japanese matchsticks from like the late 1800s. Like there's little tricks that graphic designers have been using, pulling from old reference for hundreds of years, as long as graphic designs existed. That we could get into as well when it comes to references and stuff, but we got to wrap. So Gary, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. I wanted to close it out with Jim's earlier comment, which was your style carries a lot of weight to it. It feels like we witnessed real traumatic events, and it really works. That was in regards to your work.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it is in the effort. I think, look, some styles don't need reference as much. I use it a lot because it is in the effort of trying to get real human moments in these books and ironically add some reality to the aliens and stuff too by using humans to stand in for them. Like I think it just, and I appreciate what Jim is saying. I think it adds some kind of visceralness, some kind of, there's something to it. There's some little magic that gets captured. I hope, I intend, that I think makes for a better story experience. So.
Awesome. I love it. I think we covered a lot. I think we could go for much longer, but it is time to go. Thanks to everybody who joined us in the chats, and thanks to everybody who's watching this after the fact. Let us know how you guys utilize photo reference. If you haven't utilized photo reference in the past, is there a reason? I'd be curious to hear that too. Let us know in the comments section. And that'll do it. So I'm Joshua Kemble. This is my channel. So if you haven't hit subscribe, hit the bell, like, comment, all that fun stuff. And make sure you picked up Jacob's Apartment, or asked your local library to carry Jacob's Apartment, my doomed romance story. That's like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World, and you like that flavor, you'd like that book, as well as two stories, my book about faith and mental illness that's handwritten and hand lettered. Both books, which utilized a lot of a process very similar to what Gary was showing. All right, so Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And while we were talking, I got most of the laptop sleeves uploaded. So now you can get different types of t-shirts, mugs, a few other things in a lot of different styles. And so that's at CoreyKerr.com. And if you're not ready to spend money yet, you can just jump on to the Scott's got his shirt. You can jump onto the email newsletter list at CoreyKerr.com/email.
I love it. And those mugs are Gary Hodges endorsed. I just thought I'd mention
That's right. That's right.
Speaking of the endorsement of Gary Hodges, Gary, where can people check out your work and maybe take a look at some of these panels, like in the context of the story? Where can they get those?
Well, any of my places will lead you to my Etsy shop, where my first 2 books in the DVSM series are on sale now. Still some limited supply, but on sale now. You can find me on Instagram, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots. Or you can find me on my YouTube under my name, Gary Hodges. I do a live stream once a week. The next one's going to be Saturday morning. I think the topic I want to talk about fun versus rewarding, like the difference. I think is something I was talking about with, I've been thinking about, I was talking about with our friend Jim Lujan. Is your work fun, or is it rewarding, or where is it in the spectrum, and what part of it and what part of the spectrum? So if you want to chime in or just listen to me rant a little bit, let you know how DVSM 1979 is coming, tune in Saturday morning.
Yes, and I realized this after the fact. I think I just looked, and I don't think I've updated the show description to have Gary's links. So that will be, if you're watching this now, those links will be down in the description. So I will edit that second we press stop. And then wrapping up, Scott, where can everybody find your work that's utilized photo reference, your work that hasn't? And then to wrap it up too, how do people keep track of this crazy thing, the Artcasters, that's on 50 channels all the time, and different days, different times?
Yeah, so to check out my work, you can check out my work on my website at circworks.com, where you will find the digital products that I create that will help you kind of ease some of the pain of making comics, because we're all talking about, I don't have any like photo reference packs, but I have other things too that will kind of speed up that process and save time. And that's one of the main reasons I guess we didn't even talk about it as far as speeding up that process. Anything you can use to expedite the process of creating comics, I'm all for that. So you can find stuff like that on my website. You can also find a number of prints and all kinds of cool stuff, as well as my comic books on my website. And if you go to my YouTube channel, just search Circworks on YouTube, you'll find Making Comics 101, which is my series on how to make comics. It's the most comprehensive series on making comics that you will find that's free anywhere. And as Josh alluded to, this show, the Artcasters, we do the show every single week. It kind of bounces back around between the 3 of our channels, Josh, Corey, and myself. And we have a different guest on every week. And typically we do it Thursday nights, but sometimes last week we did on Wednesday. So that can all get a little confusing. But if you don't want to be confused, the easiest way to know exactly whose channel we're going to be on, who the guest is going to be on, what the topic, all that kind of stuff, is by joining our mailing list. And there's a link in the description of this video, assuming that Josh put it in there. Well, that probably is there already, so that's usually there. But yeah, just click on that, join the mailing list, and usually about 30 minutes before we go live, I will send out an email just to let you know where we're going to be. So, because YouTube doesn't always notify people. So that's the best way to do it. And we don't spam you or anything. That's the only purpose of the mailing list, is to just let you know when the show's going live. So definitely check that out.
Awesome. I love it. And I did, to cap it, I will just say, Frank Salazar had a great idea. If you guys want to celebrate Artcasters getting past a year's worth, like if you watched every day of the year, you watched an Artcasters episode,
that's cool.
You could fill a whole year. I challenge you guys, start today. If you want some extra content, it's like an hour.
If you do that and you can prove you did it, in 1 year's time, Corey will comp you a shirt. He will send you one free shirt for just, it's like if you finish the 50-ounce steak at the steakhouse. Like that.
I need
to dive in some of those old episodes.
I need a meaningful comment on every single one of those videos.
Yes. Yeah. So we know. Yeah.
Shirt.
You know what? I'll throw in a free copy of Jacob's Apartment as well.
I'll throw in some copies of DVSM for whoever.
But again, like Corey said, there need to be meaningful comments on.
Yeah, no using ChatGPT. You got to actually write it yourself.
Yes. You need you need to reference things in the video throughout, so we can tell you watch the whole thing. Something from the beginning, something from the little, just sprinkled. I would just little check-ins, like, yeah.
Heck, we'll have you on the show. if you guys do that.
We'll quiz you
Um,
on the show.
You'll actually be a new member of Artcasters.
Yeah.
Let's just you do that.
All right,
That
guys.
escalated quickly. I got
Um,
it fast.
Yeah, it's just gonna continue. It's like we'll actually get you a new house. No.
It's safe. It's never going to happen. So you might as well just promise anyhow. $1 million.
Which was not a promise. I just wanted to reiterate that we do not have $1 million. If you want $1 million, you got to talk to Jim Lujan, the millionaire. All
Yeah,
right,
he is a millionaire.
Yeah, multi. Look it up, guys. It's true. The internet said so.
It
All right.
fluctuates, but he's always at least a millionaire.
Yeah.
So,
Frank said, "Is that a challenge?" Yes, it is, Frank. Get on it. All right. We will see you guys on the next Artcasters, and hopefully before then, we'll see you on Gary's live stream. So yeah. All right.
Yes.
See you guys. Bye.